Remember, there are three types of passages in the science section. The first one is the dueling scientists, which we're going to do right here. The other one is an experiment. And then the third one deals with charts, tables, and graphs. We're going to look through all three of those. So you have about 52 seconds a question on the science section. So for passage number 5, you will have 6 minutes and 3 seconds. You may begin. Okay, so let's talk about this one. This one had a little bit of math and science knowledge in it, like 27, based on Scientific One's discussion of the BIFs, which define would best represent the formation of hermite. Now, it says the formation of hermite. So that means in a chemical reaction, the result would be hermitite. So we could eliminate B and C because here oxygen is the result. Well, I guess we could just eliminate B. So it's either A, C, or D because all three of those have hermite in there. Now, if we look at it closely, we'll see right here, the BIFs were formed only in ocean water that was saturated with iron oxide, right? That's what Fe2+ is, iron oxide. So we can look at it, oh, iron oxide plus oxygen yields hermitite. Letter D, science knowledge. 28, it says, which of the following processes is discussed by scientist 2, but not scientist 1? Well, if we look closely here, we can see that scientist 2 is talking about a low rapid rock weathering was removing CO2, widespread continual volcanic eruptions simultaneously added an equal amount of carbon dioxide. So yeah, volcanoes. Volcanoes was the one it discussed in scientist 2, but not scientist 1. Question number 28 says, what would be the graph of that? Well, it's going to be letter B. It's a little bit of math knowledge because we're told that the rapid rock weathering was removing CO2, but the volcanoes were erupting and adding an equal amount of CO2. So the weathering is removing it, but the volcanic eruptions are putting the same amount back in. So that means the amount of CO2 will be unchanged, right? That's what that graph is indicating. Question number 30. Fossils of the photosynthetic organisms mentioned by scientist 2 would most likely have been found from these years and areas of which of the following latitudes? Wait, they tell us right here for number 30. Where is it? Here we go. Sediments deposited at the low latitudes by glaciers, right? Low latitudes. So low, it's not going to be on the globe. It's not going to be north. It's going to be south, right? Low latitudes, 20 degrees Celsius, low latitudes. Low latitudes meaning close to the equator. So that's kind of like a geography knowledge piece. Number 31, this discovery, if air temperature everywhere was at or below -10 degrees Celsius, would strongly support the viewpoint of who? Well, it's going to be scientist 1, right? Because scientist 1 says saturation with iron was possible only if the ocean had been cut off from atmospheric O2 for millions of years by thick ice. So it's going to support scientist 1, but which piece here? Well, this one says because temperature is well above the maximum temperature which glacial ice can form. No. -10 degrees is below the temperature that ice will form, right? Because it doesn't ice form at like 0 degrees. So it would be letter B. Question number 32. Suppose it was discovered that no oxygen was present in the atmosphere. Would the viewpoint of scientist 1 be strengthened or weakened? Well, be weakened, right? Because it means that they could not have formed, right? It's not going to happen. And in the last one, number 33, what if it was discovered that most of the surface was ice-free? It's going to contradict both scientists because they both kind of need the ice. So this is our second dueling scientist type question. Hopefully we're getting a little better with it. I would like to go to charts, tables, and graphs question. It'd be passage number 1. The very first passage deals with a whale doing some lunge fishing. Now, this one here, there's only, there's how many questions? There's 6 questions on this. So that means you're only going to get 5 minutes and 12 seconds. And everything is, there's a passage here, but don't read it. There's just a chart, right? So go right to the questions and answer it. As you answer the questions, you'll understand the chart more and more and more. Go ahead and get started on passage number 1. All right, let's talk about these. Definitely has a different feel than the comparing and contrasting with the dueling scientists. Okay, so let's look at the first one here. Question one, over which of the following time periods was the lunge fitting event did a gape angle both increase and decrease? Well, if we look at this, the gape angle's the dashed lines, right? So the gape angle is increasing and then it decreases, right? Because here's the gape angle. And it's kind of a weird chart, right? Like when we're reading the speed, we go ahead and we utilize the chart on the left, right? The scale. When we're dealing with the gape angle, right? The dashed lines, we deal with it on the right. So it looks like it's between 12 and 14 seconds, which would be our answer. Question number two, the figure indicates that at stage 3 of the lunge feeding, the fin whale was what? Well, here's stage 3 right here. Here we are. We're at this spot. Looks like the gape angle's pretty big. And it looks like the speed at stage 2 here, right here, stage 3, the speed is slowing down, right? So we got to make sure that we're choosing slowing down, which is H, and the gape angle was at its greatest value. Yeah, letter H. What was the fin whale's gape angle 6 seconds into the lunge feeding? Well, there's 6 seconds right there. Not doing anything. The angle must be 0. No measurement at all. A, letter A. Question number 4, during the lunge feeding event, how much time elapsed from the start to the end? Well, if I look at it, starts opening his mouth right here, closes his mouth here. The distance from 10 to 16 is 6 seconds. So the answer would be letter F. 5 is a science question. It says, among the following times during stage 1 of the lunge feeding, at which time did the fin whale have the greatest amount of momentum? So you have to remember from science class, how do you find momentum? Well, it's mass times velocity, right? Well, the whale has a constant mass. Yes, it is eating, but it's negligible. So we're really going to look at the greatest amount of momentum would really, in terms of us, since mass will be the same, when the whale has the biggest velocity. So if I look at 2, 4, 6, and 8, here's 2, here's 4, here's 6, here's 8. Oh, 8 is definitely at 8. We definitely have a greater velocity than at 2, 4, or 6. So it's got to be 8 seconds. And in the last one, number 6, again, it's science knowledge. Which of the following statements best explains why the speed of the fin whale decreased during stage 2? Well, during stage 2, the cross-sectional area of the whale's mouth. So that means like the whale's mouth is opening, right? So as the whale's mouth's opening, this is the cross section, right? Well, as that opening keeps getting larger and larger and larger, the whale's going to have a lot of drag, right? It's like you're trying to walk into the wind. As you increase that, he's getting less streamlined and he's gonna have a lot more drag. So it's gonna be letter G. The cross-sectional was increasing, right? Not decreasing, increasing, which caused the opposing drag force on the whale to increase. Letter F says decrease. Again, that silly parallel structure. Okay, so that's that one. I think what we can also do, I think we can squeeze in a third one, okay? So let's see if we can do an experiment, which would be passage number 3. And this is on page 94 by my numbering, but in terms of ACT, it's page number 42, Meaning of Life. So you're going to have, let's see, how much time? You're going to have 6 minutes on this one. Go ahead and get started. Okay. Which of the following statements best describes a difference between experiment 1 and experiment 2? Generally speaking, when we're doing experiments, when they start the second experiment, they'll tell you what's going to be different. So they're using except with strain R instead of W. So we're using strain R here. So I wrote a big R there to make sure, and I put a big W there just to help me out. So the answer should be A, a different strain was tested. Number 14, science knowledge. What type of agar growth medium was used in this experiments in the Petri dishes? Well, it's something that the bacteria and fungi will grow on, right? That's the stuff that's inside the Petri dish. It's a science knowledge question, right? Because they want to make sure that they both have an equal chance of growing on it, or else it's going to skew the experiment. Consider the dishes containing R and M, right? So that would be experiment 2 because it's using R and M. Which percent of those dishes exhibit a mild degree of inhibition? So it's going to have to be this one because it has strain R and M. A mild is this middle of the road, which is right here. That looks like it's right around a 70%. I look, there's only one letter that's closest to 70. Okay, the next one, the width of a zoi is best described by which of the following figures? Well, if we look right here in the reading, it says zoi, the space between the edges of fungal growth and of bacterial growth. I think letter G is the only one that's actually measuring it correctly, right? The distance between those two. Number 17, the width of the zoi for more than half of the dishes containing strain W and fungus M, right? It's going to be letter C. So strain W and fungus M, here it is. And we're asked more than half. Well, I think it's going to be this dark shaded one, right? That's definitely more than half. Now, the dark shaded is a strong. So I've got to look at the chart to figure out what strong is. Greater than 2.5. So that's why I chose letter C, greater than 2.5. Number 18, based on the results of experiment number 2, right? The introduction of strain R into this would more likely inhibit the growth of which fungus, M or A? Well, let's look. When we put it in there, which one would it affect more? Well, I think it would affect fungus A the most because the strong influence is what's influenced most on A. It's not going to let it grow very much. So it's got to be fungus A. So it's either H or J. They both say fungus A, but notice the difference is the percent, right? 52% versus 87. If we look at the chart, we can see that this one's definitely closer to the 87 than the 52. The last one says, which of the following best describes each of 80 of the Petri dishes in experiment number 1? If I look at experiment 1 is utilizing the W, right? So I know it can't be C or D because those are strain R. So it's got to be one of these. And then it's got fungus M and fungus A in it. Not R, fungus M. There we go, A. There would have been another choice if they had fungus A there instead, but of all the choices, that's the one. All right, Mr. Williams, you there?